Hello everyone, today's video is going to be extremely critical if you want to learn how to punish all the player who likes to play the Scholar's Mate or Mate Info. There are many players watching the video who doesn't know how to reply to Mate Info. But today after watching this video, you are going to punish your opponent who always tries to Mate you in 4 move or Scholar's Mate. They are going to regret, and I don't want to waste any time, so let's quickly jump into the video. So, we are playing with the white-black pieces and our opponent starts the game with 1e4. We play the move e5 and now opponent many times play the move queen to h5, which is they try to be tricky, they are trying to hit the pawn on e5. So obviously if you try to play the move g6 attacking the queen, they're already going to capture the e5 pawn, giving a check and also losing the rook. So what we are going to do after queen h5, we are going to develop our knight to c6, simply defending the pawn. And after this, our opponent plays the move bishop to c4, developing the bishop and also at the same time threatening mate in 1. And in this position, many players fall for the trap and they try to develop the knight, hitting the queen, but they do not see it's mate in 1 after queen into f7 and the game is over. So after bishop c4, what should you do? After bishop c4, you should play the move g6. And after g6, we are simply hitting the queen. So it looks like the trap is over, but after g6, still many players play the move queen to f3. The idea here is, now they are again threatening mate in 1. So obviously if you try to develop the bishop, it's again mate in 1, so definitely developing the knight is a normal option. But you will be surprised to know that many top players have already played this trap, like Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, or even Alireza Firouzja. So how to reply to this particular trap? So basically, the idea is to push the pawn to d3, develop the bishop, try to get the knight into the game, and now putting pressure on the knight on f6, because as we have played the move g6, the dark squares are extremely weak. So that's the idea. So here d3 is a bad move because after knight d4, we hit the queen and the pawn. So first, what white should do here is, white is having two options to either play the move knight to e2 or play the move c3 in order to cover the knight to d4 idea. First, let's try to discuss what happens if white plays the move knight to e2, simply covering the knight to d4 idea. After knight e2, we develop the bishop, our opponent plays the move d3. We castle and now our opponent plays the move bishop to g5, developing the bishop, simply pinning up the knight. And now the idea is to simply develop the knight, put the knight to d5, and it is going to be a huge amount of pressure on the f6 knight and we are going to lose the game. So after bishop g5, we play the move h6, which is very sensible. We push the pawn, hit the bishop. If the bishop captures the knight, congratulations, now we are already slightly better in this position after bishop into, because we are having the bishop pair, which is a good positional advantage in the middle game. So yeah, going back with the bishop is the most common option and the most playable option in the game. So after bishop h4, we play the move g5, even hitting the bishop to g3. And now you will realize how the bishop on g3 is simply blocked by our dark squared pawns. The bishop is not having no space to go. So after bishop to g3, we play the move d5, a very strong move. And at the first glance, it looks like a blunder because we are already giving up a pawn for free. For example, after pawn takes, it looks like we cannot capture the pawn because the white will simply capture the knight. So how are we going to continue the game? We are going to develop our bishop to g4, hit the queen because the bishop is protected by the knight. The queen move, and now we are going to play the move knight to d4. A normal way to play is to simply capture the d5 pawn, which is extremely fine, but we are having even more powerful knight to d4. And after knight to d4, our idea is already to capture the knight, and at the same time we are also hitting the c2 pawn, giving a check and also threatening to take the queen. So white is having the fourth move of capturing the knight, and after pawn takes, as you can see, the e file is simply opened up, and after queen takes, we simply give a check after rook to e8. After rook e8 check, there are two moves for white to go to d2 or to f1. If king d2, we play the move knight to e4 check, and at the same time we are going to take the queen and win the game. And if king to f1, we are going to play the move bishop to e2 check, king to g1, which is a fourth move, and now we play the move knight to d7. and you would be surprised to know that the queen is simply trapped in the center of the board. There is no square for the queen to go, and you're going to win the queen and eventually the game. So this is how you should play if your opponent plays the move knight to e2. So now let's try to discuss what happens if white plays the move c3 instead, trying to take away the d4 square. Now we play the move bishop to g7, the same thing, d3, short castle, bishop to g5, h6, again hitting the bishop goes back, we play again g5, bishop to g3, and now again we play the move g5. d5 hitting the pawn on the bishop. White is not having many options but to capture the pawn. Again we develop the bishop hitting the queen. The queen can't really defend the pawn no longer, so she has to move to e3, which is the only square, and now we can finally capture the pawn on d5. Now knight to d4 is no longer there because the c3 pawn is already covering the square. So after knight into d5, we are already hitting the queen, and we are also preparing to play the move knight to f4, which is an extremely strong move. So white must capture the knight, and now after queen takes the bishop, we are already threatening to take the g2 pawn, followed by the rook. So what can white do much? White can simply play the move f3, trying to hit the bishop. We can try to move the bishop, which is extremely fine. We are still better in the game. But an even powerful move is to play the move f5. After f5, we are simply threatening to play the move f4, getting a bishop or the queen. So after pawn takes, we simply capture the pawn on g2 now, hitting the rook. So white must play the move queen f3 in order to protect the rook, but now comes queen into b2. I'm pretty sure that you must have not seen this coming up. After queen into b2, we get the rook, eventually the knight, and eventually the king. So the game is eventually over for white. There is nothing much left to play. So this is what happens if white goes for playing the move c3 in the position. So now let's try to discuss the final thing if white tries to play a bit safely. For example, after knight to e2, bishop to g7, d3, short castle, and here at the place of playing the move bishop to g5, white plays a bit slowly by playing the move knight to c3. And the idea of knight c3 here is white doesn't really want to allow us to play the move d5 in the future. So after knight c3, we develop the pawn to d6, not playing the move d5, and now bishop to g5. After bishop g5, still knight to d5 is a good idea for white. So we play the move h6 hitting the bishop. We even play the move g5. Now after bishop g3, a simple random move, a good move would be to simply play the move bishop e6, putting the bishop in a good diagonal, simply trading off this powerful bishop. And after the bishop trade, we are having a pretty strong center, open f5, semi-open f5, and the possession is extremely equalish. But in this particular position, we are having even more powerful move, which is knight to d4. After knight d4, we simply hit the queen and the knight and the pawn. So what you must do, you must capture the knight, or else I'm threatening knight into c2, or even to capture the queen. So after knight takes, we take with the pawn, and here, if for example, if knight e2 trying to hit the pawn, already bishop g4 traps the queen. So white must play the move knight to d5, and after knight d5 trying to hit the knight, we are going to surprise our opponent by playing the move knight to h7. All those who think bishop g4 works, after knight takes, it's a check, and after, for example, bishop takes, white can happily capture the bishop, so it's not really working. So that's the reason we simply play the move knight h7, and at the first glance, it looks like such a bad move. But just realize our idea is to play the move c6, hitting the knight to b4, and after a5, we simply get the knight for free, and we simply win a piece and eventually the game. For example, after short castle, we simply play c6, hitting the knight goes back, we play the move a5, and you will realize there is no escape square for the white knight, and it's completely winning for black. So now this is what happens. So coming back a bit, at the place of short castle, what if white plays the move a4, trying to make a square for the knight to go to a2. We play the move c6, knight goes to b4, and now we play the move d5, a very strong move. After pawn takes, which is kind of a normal move, going to e7 check, and at the same time we capture the knight. Using a bit of tactics and going to win the piece, and eventually we're going to win the game. So this is how you can really punish anyone who likes to play the move Scholar's Mate or Mate in 4 idea. You can punish them brutally and try to win the game in style like this. So I hope that this video might have helped you to improve your game. If it did, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this, so till then stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.